let you know.
Okay, we are live. They seem to have a bit more, so I can go turn the TV off and everything. Okay.
Going back and forth.
The pencil thing, if you want to. No, it's
just showing my screen right now, though. That's the problem.
it's gonna be like a little pencil on that.
I don't actually need to have her do anything with it.
Hey, yo, folks. Yeah, it was a sudden restart. No intro, no anything. Hope you all can get in here before the trial actually commences. I'll have to get a jacket on so I don't show you all my sweaty armpits. Hold on a second. Hey again. Now, everybody who I have invited, David, Mo, and one more, and Sal. Sal should be in there now, so I will see if he will be live tweeting. Or if he was allowed to.
You set them all down there.
Doesn't look like that.
Somebody stole them.
That's why I had to steal the pen from someone else.
Oh, he
Huh?
stole a pen from someone else.
I lost some pens somewhere between leaving here and coming back to here.
Let's see if...
I have other pens. No, I have a bunch. I just was looking for a particular pen.
Ooh, these are nice pens.
Oh, and Rumble is up.
Not on the PD budget.
Pop out
Yeah.
chat. And let's get pop out chat for YouTube as well.
Matter we can take up before the defendant gets here.
So I can
All right,
see.
we're back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel. Mr. Jackson, you waiving your client's presence for
Yes, for the
purposes
purpose
of addressing this issue. Go ahead.
Your Honor, during the lunch break, we had played some clips for Sarah Turney. It is my contention, based on her testimony, that her father brainwashed her, that she was told these things, that the jury be able to see these clips to show her demeanor while she was making these statements to Detective Anderson. So I was going to show 3 clips. One of them is 15 seconds long. One is about a minute, and the other is about 35 seconds. The state says they object, so I thought we would have that discussion with you. I do believe it goes to her. I do believe it goes to her testimony.
Well, the proper way is to ask, first of all, play it for the witness. It either refreshes her recollection or it doesn't. If it doesn't refresh her recollection, then it's hearsay. I mean, in other words, if it refreshes her recollection, then she can say, yeah, I remember saying that. If she has no memory of saying it, it's hearsay.
So you're moving to admit portions of the interview.
not admit, just play them in court as demonstrative. There's nothing saying that it's hearsay. She's agreeing that she made those statements. We're not asking reflection. She has made statements to this jury that her father brainwashed her.
I get it. I get it. Let the record reflect the defendant is now present. Well, if the jury is seeing it, then it's got to be admitted. So you're moving to admit portions of the interview,
Yes,
and you believe it's admissible because
it is impeachment evidence to show that she wasn't brainwashed. Her demeanor while she testifies is allowed all the time in courts where people are saying something and saying that something else happened. Here, she is saying that none of this is true. I just said it to the police because I was brainwashed. The jury should be able to get to see her demeanor while she was talking to Detective Henry.
Defense make a strong case. Hey, hey. Hello. Yeah, I see you all. Yeah, I have to get a cup of coffee. 1 sec. Oh, in my merch store, you can get this. Just saying. You can't un-F a cluster F.
well, I've considered the rules. I think probably the closest rule that applies is Rule 613, which pertains to prior statements of witnesses. Extrinsic evidence of a prior inconsistent statement is admissible only if the witness is given an opportunity to explain or deny the statement, and an adverse party is given an opportunity to examine the witness about it if justice so requires. So I think it's premature to offer the videos yet. She's still being examined. So I'm going to deny the request at this time. You may renew the request after she's had a full opportunity to explain or deny her statements now that she's been given an opportunity to see the video. So the request for admission at this time is denied. Anything else before we bring the jury in?
What
No, you're
is
All right, Angela, you can
is
bring the
Dani
jury in.
here? No. I can see her. Or is if
And
it just
Ms. Turney may resume the witness stand. I thought I saw her somewhere in here.
just to state the matter? Yes, all hail Aphrodite. A bit early. But yeah. And I've been told that court will start at 10:30 each day. Yeah, I understand the ruling, might not agree to it. As the defense said, now she has actually watched it. Yeah, this will be interesting. Yes, Sal went to court, so he should be there. Hopefully he can get out and get on his phone during the break, so we can hear his evaluation of the courtroom and everything. No? Oh, darn it.
Please be seated. Let the record, we're back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record reflect the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. Sarah Turney is back on the witness stand. And Mr. Jackson, whenever you're ready, you may resume your cross-examination of the witness.
Good afternoon. Going back to before lunch, I had asked you a few questions about a couple things, and you didn't remember those things or didn't remember saying them to the detective. So I had you listen to them during lunch. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I had you listen to about 3 or 4 clips,
Yes.
and then maybe another one that we may talk about here in a little bit.
Okay. Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And in one of those clips was in regards to whether Alissa had ever talked about going to run away. Do you remember listening to that clip?
Yes.
And on direct, you said that no, she hadn't ever planned on doing that, correct?
Yes.
But you listened to that clip, correct?
Yes.
And in that clip that was played, you were asked by the detective and by Detective Anderson if she'd ever thought about running away, correct?
Yes. I believe that's what he said.
And you said all the time.
Yes.
And you said that her and your father fought all the time. She wanted to get emancipated. She wanted to run away.
Yes.
And then he asked you about when these things happen and why they happened. And it was because of being caught with drugs, getting in trouble, stuff like that, correct?
Yes.
In another clip, you were asked about her being experimental. Do you remember listening to that clip?
Yes.
And in that clip, you gave an example, and you listened to that one, correct?
Yes.
You gave that example about her getting into car with people that she didn't know.
Yes.
Another friend,
A story I had heard. Yes.
from her friends. That's what you said. It was from her friends.
I said she was with her friends.
And you said that you and her, right before that clip, you said that you and her friends would talk, and this is something that you learned.
It wasn't from her friends. No, sir.
She is at this time 33 or 34. She was, I don't know, during these statements with the cops, she might have been 17 or 18.
In that clip, you said you would talk to her friends, and then you start talking about that, correct?
Objection. This is hearsay.
Well, I'm a little unclear as to what the question is. Why don't you re-ask the question?
The question was, did you say that she got into the car with other people?
And there's
Told Detective Anderson that,
my
correct?
objection is there's no foundation.
Overruled, the witness may answer if she knows.
Yeah. It was not something I personally observed.
I asked you, did you tell that to Detective Anderson?
Can you restate?
Objection is not relevant. It's not personal knowledge.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Did you tell Detective Anderson in that clip that we listened to that she was experimental?
Yes.
Remember saying that?
Yes.
And that one of the examples you gave was that she got into cars of boys to go to a party that she didn't know.
Yes.
That is what you said, correct?
Yes, sir.
Another question that I asked you before break was in regards to her ADD and her short-term memory. Do you remember me asking you about that?
Yes.
And do you remember reviewing the clip over lunch?
Yes.
And in that clip, you told the detective that her ADD came out in short-term memory loss, correct?
Yes.
And that you wouldn't know it by talking to her, that she had issues, but it showed up in her test scores and her short-term memory.
Yes.
All right. Now, I want to
Yeah, there's a slight difference from the direct examination. Now, she's pulling back of sorts. I said this on the morning stream that there are some things about her answering, the differences between direct and cross-examination. I've been doing law for over 30 years. I have a BS meter. That's not evidence. I could be totally wrong, but there's something here. I just can't explain it. Hello again, Dirk.
go right before.
And did everybody notice how she answered before the break? That's what I said. Then she answered one time, I was brainwashed to say it. She also said, if you say this, I believe you, or something of that sort. Now her answers are suddenly very short and concise. That's a difference in demeanor and voice. Yeah.
Lunch, we were talking about, I asked you about the truck. I asked you if there any blood, anything like that in the house, anything like that. And we had kind of got to a point where we stopped. I want to talk to you a little bit about Alissa. She could be pretty aggressive.
I agree. How the prosecution, because I don't really trust the prosecution on this. He's very forgetful, jumps back and forth. But I do agree with everything on cross should be able to be rehabilitated. Should be. But that's up to the prosecution. And we'll see about that later.
That's
Yes.
what you told the detective. She was aggressive.
Yes.
She could be feisty.
Absolutely.
She let people know how she felt.
Yes.
She was pretty strong.
Yes.
She could hold her own.
Yes.
On May 17th, when your dad picked you up from Peanuts, I think is your friend that you called her. Is that her nickname?
Peanut and Melody, they were sisters.
Okay. And did you ever notice any marks on your dad?
No.
Any scratches, bruises, black eyes?
No.
Now, at some point, you found a note, correct?
Yes.
And the county attorney had went through that note with you, correct?
Yes.
Something else that you noted, I think, when you were talking to the detectives was that.
Yeah, she's answering questions in a totally different way. So, without knowing, she might have had a talk with the prosecution in the break. Maybe not the. She's supposed to be there, up there. Oh, tell the truth, nothing but the truth. Under perjury, whatever. Oh, really? What did our spineless prime minister promise them? I'll have to check that out later. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
You said that it was odd that you told the detective that it was odd that her first letter was capitalized in the A. Do you remember telling him that?
Yes.
I'm still on the fence about how I like the defense. Because Lefty here is good, but I'm constantly distracted with his stump. I know he can't help it. He has half an arm. I have no idea how that came to be. But it's a bit distracting. Yeah.
You said that she never did that, correct?
Yes.
Again, I said this during the morning session and I say it again. I really hope this guy is guilty. I really hope that the state can bring forward enough evidence, circumstantial or not, so the family can get closure. Here's the thing. What I feel has nothing to do with the trial. There has to be evidence beyond reasonable doubt. Yes, but as far as I know, that won't be in this trial. It's both a prior act that has nothing to do with the disappearance of Alissa, but it also happened 7 years after her disappearance. So that will not be admitted. And he spent 7 years, he was sentenced to 10 years. He spent 7 of them in federal prison, and it was, I believe, 24 or 27 pipe bombs and 4 fire bombs and silencers. I have yet to find the actual crime scene photos of the pipe bombs. So the only photos I have seen looks like gunshot shells, but I don't know. But let's get back to this trial.
I'm going to show you some letters. You can tell me if you recognize any of the writing or anything like that. I don't want you to tell me what's on them. We're not going to talk about the letters themselves. We're just going to ask you to look at the signature line at the bottom and see if you recognize it.
Okay.
Oh, that's too close to opening a door. I don't like this.
Are you familiar with a
Oh,
friend? I think you talked about it by the name of Charity Robinson.
Yes.
That is someone that your sister met while at Barry Goldwater.
I believe that's correct.
And that's your sister went there her freshman and sophomore year,
No, I think just her sophomore year,
just her sophomore year.
I believe.
You may.
Handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 42.
Yeah, here's the thing. I can also sense there's something off here, but the off thing might just be that she knows a lot more, but she's not allowed to talk about it due to hearsay, due to evidence being excluded, due to anything. So that might be one of the reasons something is off, because she just can't in this trial say everything. So that might be what is tingling my BS meter, that she wants to, but she can't. I'm just throwing that out as an option.
You can flip through those pages and
Yeah, here's the deal. I have to say this. He is actively getting the arm of his jacket up to show the stump. And I don't know why, but for me, it's distracting. And in trial, you want the jury to focus on your words and words alone. A bit demeanor, a bit theatrics, but not distracting. And that has nothing to do with him having half an arm. It's the distraction.
It's not 42, 92.
92. Sorry, I didn't have my glasses on. Sure look.
And just saying, if I would never have missed an opportunity to have a hook. Just saying. He might have that in his spare time. I have no idea. But yeah, I'm not American, so I don't know. Maybe it works in Arizona. He's been a lawyer for a very long time. So with that experience, that might be why he does it. And yes, there will be bad jokes and there will be dad jokes. But in the end, this is a trial. It's a serious matter, but we have to break it off at times with bad jokes. Hi, Kim. Good to have you here.
I handed you probably approximately at least 10 letters, correct? And you reviewed them?
Yes.
And all of these, is it a capital A like this one?
It is.
Okay, so
When you saw the note, you immediately recognized it as her handwriting?
Yes.
In the note, she referenced taking some money, correct?
In the note I'm seeing here, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
And your dad was known to have cash in his house?
Yes, some.
a new difference between before lunch and after. She says, sir. She's more respectful. It was not much of respect before lunch. Just something I noticed.
Now, there's been a little bit of discussion about finding the note and finding the cell phone. I believe you said that you found the cell phone next to the note,
God,
correct?
I set the
Yes.
chat on fire.
Now, do you remember as soon as your dad saw the note, he called Alyssa's cell phone?
No, I don't recall that.
And you guys heard the phone ring?
No, the note was right next to the phone.
Now she
I'm
might
going
have.
to play you another clip. May I approach, Runner?
You may.
Every time she says something now that isn't in accordance to her statements when she was 17 or 12. I'm not exactly sure when she had this interview with the officer. But everything that is not only different, but direct opposite, that can be impeached. So that brings us closer and closer to having these recordings admitted as evidence. So the jury can look at her demeanor in that interview, because she claimed before lunch that her dad brainwashed her to say things. And that can make the recordings admissible. The judge said earlier that he won't reference this issue until after the cross, I believe he said. So we might be getting closer and closer to having these recordings actually admitted and played. Well, it's an easier reach. I don't know. I had a kid in school we called Knuckles because he had a close encounter with a chainsaw and the bad end of it.
It's okay. It's yeah, right there.
Ben, I can't show it, and either the joke or the answer. Yeah, maybe. And I almost said, that lawyer can't tie his tie. And then I remembered, oh, there might be an explanation for that. Sorry.
He's still talking about it a little bit.
I'm in labor law. I have seen injuries more than you should. I've seen fingers and limbs torn off, hair scalped, and and I meet these people some years later, and I know you can do a lot even with missing fingers and a missing hand and stuff like that. Yeah. The worst injury I've ever seen was one guy who was in a silo cleaning, and it was supposed to be empty from quicklime. It wasn't, and he got it on him. That is the worst injury I've ever seen in my life. And that's something that shows up in my memory way too often. Hey, genitals are here. This guy has the best chat name ever. Just saying.
I think it's
Did that help refresh your recollection of that conversation you had with Detective Anderson?
yes. Thank you.
She's much more respectful after lunch. Yeah, it might be that she was hungry. Never know. But the effect
In
can
that
be
conversation
noticeable.
with Detective Anderson, which was back in September of 2008, you told him that you heard the phone ring, right? I heard it, you said.
Yes.
Correct. And you said you told him that obviously she wasn't there and he called her and we heard it, correct?
Yes.
And you saw the fear in your dad's eyes, his concern for Alissa,
Yes.
and he immediately started calling Alyssa's friends. He called her boyfriend.
I believe so. Yeah.
He called family members.
Yes.
And at some point he called everyone in her phone.
Yeah.
All her friends.
Yes.
He went to Jack in the Box.
That's what I was told.
And finally, he did call police to report her missing later that night, correct?
Yes.
And his attempts to find Alissa didn't stop that night, did they?
I suppose not. No.
For weeks after she ran away, he would continue to call her friends,
I wasn't there for that.
coworkers, family members.
Certainly family.
He put up flyers.
Yes.
He was even contacted by Phoenix police because some of the flyers you guys had put up, they asked you to take down, correct?
That's what he had told me. Yes.
That's what you told Detective Anderson, correct?
If it was in that interview, then that's what I told him.
But in that interview with Detective Anderson, you didn't tell him that your dad told you this, did you?
No.
And as time passed, his concern grew that something had happened to Alissa.
I would say he had that concern that very night.
Okay. He was annoyed and frustrated by the way Phoenix Police Department was handling the case.
That's what he said.
You didn't see him being annoyed and frustrated?
He was generally annoyed and frustrated.
You were aware that he called detectives to get them to investigate?
Not that I
Were you
can.
aware?
No, not that I can recall.
Were you aware he wrote letters to the police chief?
After the fact, yes.
He wrote letters to congressmen,
I believe that's what happened. I've never seen them.
contacted the FBI.
I believe so. I wasn't witness to these things.
But you did tell Detective Anderson and other people, and I believe in your podcast too, that Alyssa's runaway and subsequent disappearance consumed your dad's life for years.
Yeah, that's what it appeared.
You told Detective Anderson that he spent large amounts of money in an effort to find her.
Because that's what I believed, yes.
He took trips to California. You talked about that on direct, correct?
At least one.
And he did this over the months after her disappearance?
I believe so.
And he took you on one or two of those trips, you said? One for sure, maybe another one?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was two for sure, but I do remember at least one. There's some pictures.
And you testified on direct that you guys went to the mall, you went to the beach, you did hand out some flyers at the mall.
Yes.
But he also took you to the payphone that the alleged call from Alissa came, correct?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember telling Detective Anderson that he took you to that payphone and he took pictures of the payphone and the surrounding stores?
I remember pictures of the payphone, so I have to assume that that's what happened. I just don't have a recollection of it.
You don't have a recollection now of telling Detective Anderson that he took you there?
I don't remember half that interview, to be honest, but if that's what I said, then that's what happened.
You told Detective Anderson in subsequent interviews that he drove around in areas where he believed girls had been trafficked to try to find her.
That's what he told me, yes.
You also
Sometimes, if there are now for her, this is harder because she is the prime witness, so to speak. But even then, yes, on occasions, I've seen witnesses making statement in the same tone of voice, in the same manner, regardless who is asking the questions. I must say, you do make an indirect point here that it's not unusual either that have different demeanor towards the prosecution and the defense. It's not unusual. What I'm reacting to now is her change in attitude before and after lunch during cross. That is also a bit, but also she might have been hangry. But there's a clear difference in how she answers the question. And that might be a suggestion that if she gets combative or combative, that might be picked up by the jury. So now she's pulling back to being not as combative. Yeah. Let's continue.
Told Detective Anderson that while you were in California with him, you were in an area that you believed was your Aunt Lynette's house, and he was staking out that area to see if they were hiding her.
Oh, okay, then yes.
Do you remember saying that to Detective?
No, but I believe that was what I believed.
But you told Detective Anderson that that happened while you were on the trip to California with him.
Yes, I was alone in a hotel room for much of that trip. However, he would say that some things he had to do was dangerous and that I could not come with.
But if you told Detective Anderson that you were there in this area, which you thought was weird because you were just hanging out outside some house staking it out, that wouldn't be you in the hotel, correct?
No, correct. If that's what I said, then I'm sure that's what happened.
Now, there's been talk about your dad recording conversations.
Yes.
This has done for years, correct?
Yes, my whole life.
Done before you were born even, correct?
Yes.
He probably did this before Alissa was born.
Yeah, I believe there are tapes dating back to the 70s.
He was pretty
Hi,
paranoid.
Baker.
Yes.
Everybody go subscribe.
Now, I want to
No,
ask you about the
Baker.
recording system in the house. You did have a few questions asked to you about this system. This was on the home phone in the kitchen area, correct?
Yes.
And the line from the wall would connect to the box or the recording system, correct?
I would assume so. I don't know exactly.
And there was-
I'd never like set it up myself.
Okay. Did you ever look at it though? You've seen it,
Oh, sure. Yeah, it was there.
and it required tapes to be inside for it to record,
Yes.
and it would only record that particular phone, right?
Yes.
And there'd be times that conversations would be happening and the call would end, correct? The recording would end because the tape ended, correct?
Yes.
And then to be able to reset it, you'd have to put a new tape in and re-push to record. It wouldn't automatically do that, correct?
Correct.
The phone in the kitchen wasn't the only phone in the house, was it? Your dad had a landline, same line, but a phone in his bedroom, correct?
He had a cell phone.
But he also had another receiver in his bedroom, correct?
Not, I mean, like on the wall, but I don't remember a phone. It's possible, but I don't remember.
But if that phone was there and didn't have a recording system, if that phone was answered, it wouldn't record, correct? It only recorded when you picked up that specific receiver in the kitchen.
Objection. She already
I'm
said
not
she
quite
didn't
sure.
remember.
I don't remember him having a phone in his room.
But you did know that the only way that that recording happened is when you picked up that
Prosecution needs
particular
to wake
receiver
up
in the
here.
kitchen, correct?
I'm not sure. I just know when you picked up the home phone, it recorded.
Yeah.
Now, you're aware that there was a camera system in the house, correct?
Yes.
There was one in the carport looking out to the street
Looking at the
Prosecution.
front door, or the door we used to get in the home.
and out towards the street, correct? It was placed in the back corner to see the door entering there, and you could also see under the garage a little bit.
I can't quite recall. I don't think I've seen any video of it, which helps my memory.
Okay. And the other was an event in the living room
Yes.
that covered the couch and that Arcadia door in the house.
I don't quite remember if it covered the Arcadia door, but for sure the couch.
Now, you talked about that video recording system on direct, correct?
Yes.
And you said that your dad told you that Sarah was not.
Yeah, here's the thing. She described almost everything that was in the house during direct examination. And all of a sudden she doesn't remember things. And might be so, but then that should have been also in direct. Because I know that victims, witnesses sometimes try to over-explain things. And that can be bad when it comes to cross, when they all of a sudden tries to be a little more at the other end. And that difference, that can be picked up by a jury. And so this is general advice, not legal advice. If you're a victim or a witness, don't add to it, don't take away from it. Tell your story as you remember it, as you know happened. That's general advice.
Not to know about the camera in the vent. Do you remember saying that?
Alissa was not to know
Sorry.
about the camera in the vent. Yes. I was told not to tell her.
Thursday was the first time you ever made that statement to anyone, correct?
No,
You never told Detective Anderson that in an interview?
I'm sure I have. And I've certainly said it on many, many podcasts over the years.
Ooh, bad answer. That, now she's referring to podcast. That is the first time during this trial podcast has been named. This will be interesting to see how the defense reacts, because I'm quite sure she's not allowed to say that. But we will hear now. Let's just go back a few seconds.
I'm sure I have. And I've certainly said it on many, many podcasts over the years.
Okay. No objections.
You never said it to Detective Anderson. You never said it to Detective Summershoe.
I would have to recall. We had so many communications over the years, it's extremely difficult to tell.
Did you ever tell the county attorneys?
Possibly.
He might ask these questions because he knows this is the first time to an officer. If she's told it on the podcast, that is one thing. But if it's not sworn in, then in an affidavit, testimony, then legally, I believe, if the first time she said it was Thursday to either a police officer or the prosecutor or the attorney's office, then anything she said on the podcast it's not evidence. It can almost, I wish I had David on here. Maybe MG Law can assist me in this in the chat. It can almost be, if that has enough spread, that it can be more prejudicial than probative, and that the podcast in itself, they can bring it in to see if this her podcast testimony has evolved over the years. I don't know. We will see later on. There's a lot of trial left. According to one number I've heard, it will be going on at least until the 20th.
You knew that Alissa knew the camera was there, don't you?
Eventually, yeah, she did.
Speak of the devil. Did you hear that?
I did. And so here's my thought. So if she never mentioned it to police during questioning back in 2001, yet somehow she mentions it on her podcast, I would use that to impeach her. Like, okay, so your memory is better, in 2019 as opposed to 2001. Isn't it possible, kind of you're hinting at like you made this up in order to make your podcast more valuable or whatever? That's what I would argue.
Yeah. Oh, I'm still having this comment up. I didn't realize that. Yeah. There was also
I don't know. That was my gut thought. That was my gut instinct. It's like, well, how is it that she was never mentioned it to police? I'm assuming since they're asking about it, it's not contained in any of the police reports or her handwritten witness statements or anything like that. Yet she's mentioning it all over her podcast. Seems a bit dubious.
Yeah. And so not in 2001. I believe there was an interview in 2007, 2008. And then this trial or during pre-trial or something like that.
Yeah.
So somewhere
She doesn't
between
mention.
Yeah. Oh, and he's gone. Yeah. This is a double-edged sword. The prosecution can now claim they opened the door and now they can make claims from that podcast. Or the defense can say, she opened the door. Now we can impeach her with everything that's in that podcast. Even stuff that's in the podcast that she's not saying now in trial. This will be much more interesting and I was really interested before this. And for you in the chat who doesn't do law or have a law education, we who do it get excited over whole different things than you do. Just saying.
Did find out.
Let's go back.
Never tell the county attorneys.
Possibly.
But you knew that Alissa knew the camera was there, don't you?
Eventually, yeah, she did find out.
She knew it was there for years.
The camera in the vent?
Yes.
It was not there for years. No, sir.
Now, the system had two cameras, correct? The one in the vent and the one in the carport, correct?
That is what I remember, yes.
And that system was held in your dad's room, correct? It was on looked like a VCR or something like that box, right?
Yes.
And it was connected to a TV, a screen.
Yeah, it was like a TV and a VCR is what I remember.
Yeah. So it ran constantly. The live feed was there.
Yes.
It didn't always record them.
Correct.
But if you went in there and looked at the screen, you could see the two cameras.
No, so there were different settings where it was either one camera, the other, or it could cycle, I believe.
But it would have both, correct? You could look at the system and see both cameras.
Not like on one
screen.
screen. No, it was either one camera, the other, or it cycled between them.
Yeah, so the cycle would show both cameras at the same time, correct?
If it was set to the cycle, yeah.
And you guys were able to go into your dad's room and look at those cameras, look at the monitor.
I'm sure we had the opportunity, but we weren't really supposed to go in there.
Well, in your interview with Detective Anderson, you said that if you guys heard a noise or if you heard something, you would go in there and monitor the system to see what the camera were showing, correct?
Yeah, if you say I said so, sure.
Well, do you believe you said that? Do you believe that ever happened?
I believe I went into his room. Absolutely.
And you knew that she could see it because there was a blinking red light, correct?
No, it was covered.
So if all her friends said they saw a blinking red light, but you believe that's not true?
I can't attest to what her friend said. I know that he often covered it with electrical tape on most of his cameras.
That she remembers clearly. It's that tingling BS meter in my spine. I can't help it. Chat, again, I could be way wrong. I'm just calling it. And I know Nanya. But here's the thing. If it's not in evidence, I can't attest to it. I can't count that in if it's not in evidence.
Now, again, your testimony is that this camera in the living room was set in the vent to spy on Alissa. But in your interviews with Detective Anderson, you told them that the cameras were put up because someone tried to break into your house while your sister and you were home.
That's what I was told, yes.
Again, that's not what you didn't say. This is what I was told. You told Detective Anderson that the cameras were installed because someone tried to break into the house while me and my sister were there, correct?
Yes, that's what I believed at the time.
That is what you told. I'm not asking you what you believed. That is what you told Detective Anderson. You didn't tell him, I believe, all that. That's all now. This is all 20 years later, you're saying believe. Back then, you told him this is what happened, correct?
Yes.
That was a nice reel-in.
Now, going to that
Be
recording
careful,
function,
lawyer.
you
You're
talked
on the
about,
edge.
again, we talked about how the feed would just be live, where you could monitor it, but it doesn't always record, correct?
Yes.
And to be able to record it, you actually had to go in and press record on the tape, correct?
Yes.
So it wasn't.
Here's the deal with the podcast. That is her story. In trial, everything is under oath. In a podcast, it's not. But then again, she might show evidence in the podcast that simply isn't admissible here. And that's the hard truth about trials. There are rules that needs to be followed. Now, I know we have watched a few trials where rules were thrown out the window. This doesn't seem to be one of these trials yet. But if I keep pausing, I will be here until it's time to drive to work. Let's continue.
Always record, correct?
Yes.
And to be able to record it, you actually had to go in and press record on the tape, correct?
Yes.
So it wasn't recording constantly.
It's a high-risk game he's playing.
There had to be a tape in it, but it was recording frequently from what I remember.
But again, you would have to push record to be able to do it.
Yes.
And he would do it typically. When would your dad turn it on?
I believe it was recording at most times.
You told Detective Anderson that it wasn't always recording and that typically he would turn it on if he heard a noise or if he left or if he felt like recording it because he was nosy.
Yes.
You knew how to start the recorder, correct?
Yeah.
Alissa knew how to start it,
I'm not sure.
and it would record onto VHS tapes.
Yes.
Now, you talked a little bit about
Let's go back a bit. And I forgot my trail of thought. He's walking a very thin line. And we have to remember me, David, MG Law, Baker, we have an education in law. We might react completely different than a juror. Mo, on the other hand, not trained in law. She was hesitant to the believability of this witness. So, yeah. Yeah. You never know where a juror goes.
Now, you talked a little bit about podcast. A statement that your dad had made about coming to his deathbed. Do you remember making that statement
Yes.
on direct?
Yes.
You didn't tell the jury the complete statement, did you?
I mean, we can play it if you'd like.
Well, he said other things about recording about that confession, correct? That you call a confession, correct?
He also said that he would confess if the state gave him lethal injection within 10 days.
And he also denied 50 times to you over the years that he's not going to confess to something he didn't do, correct?
It's varied throughout the years. Something he says he doesn't remember doing is something he told me.
You said, you just specified it there, that he would get the lethal injection. He actually said, if that quote is correct, he actually said, if this is what you want me to do, if it makes you feel happy, correct? Is it going to make you feel better? That's what he said, correct?
No, I don't believe it was phrased like that.
And then he told you that I didn't do anything and I'm not going to confess to anything that I didn't do, correct?
Yes.
Now, I want to hear the recording. Damn. Oh.
And
Jesus Christ.
the reason
You're
you went there
30
that
minutes
day
behind
was
after
to try to
1
get a
hour.
confession from him, correct?
There were many reasons I went there that day. I was-
Detective Anderson and Detective Summershoe said that the case wasn't moving and they would need a confession for something to happen, correct?
No, not in those exact words. I believe they also wanted her body.
But they told you couldn't go anywhere without a confession.
I don't recall that specific phrasing.
So you attempted to get a confession, correct?
I attempted to get answers, absolutely.
And he repeatedly told you that the answer is going to be the same. Even if you come to my deathbed, I did not kill your sister. And he was adamant over and over. And he was offended that you believed he did something, correct? That was part of that conversation also, right?
No.
He never told you, I can't believe my own daughter thinks I could do something this heinous.
At the very end, yes. After he taunted me.
But he said that in the conversation in context of this alleged, what you call a confession.
Yes, at the very end.
And he repeatedly told you he could not confess to something he didn't do.
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
Now, when you went to that Starbucks, did you tell him you were recording?
No.
Oh, is this a one-party consent state, Arizona?
Now, I want to
No, it is a one. I remember Arizona. I believe Sal said that on Thursday.
ask you a few questions about Alyssa's boyfriend, John Lackman. You were aware she was dating him?
Yes.
He had come over to the house a few times
Yes.
on a number of occasions?
Yeah.
You thought they had I don't know, how would you describe their relationship?
Yeah. Good. Normal.
Did she ever cheat on him?
It's hard. I don't know if they were together. I don't know what happened between that fight and when she was with Mike Stanley on the couch.
So
But I would assume, I guess so. Yeah. It's not
within a
like,
few weeks of
Oh, what? What did I just miss?
questions about Alyssa's boyfriend, John Lackman. You were aware she was dating him?
yes.
He had come over to the house a few times
Yes.
on a number of occasions?
Yeah.
You thought they had I don't know, how would you describe their relationship?
Yeah. Good. Normal.
Did she ever cheat on him?
It's hard. I don't know if they were together. I don't know what happened between that fight and when she was with
Oh.
Mike Stanley on the couch.
So
But I would assume, I guess so. Yeah. It's not
within a
like,
few weeks of her going missing, she was on the couch with another man, correct?
yes, but I don't know if they had broken up because of the fight.
And he was
Okay. All of a sudden, she leaving behind the necklace, her boyfriend, or by that time ex-boyfriend, on and off again boyfriend. All of a sudden, we have an explanation for that. Let's back up a bit.
Yes, but I don't know if they had broken up because of the fight.
And he was a 20-year-old who was weeks away from turning 21, correct?
I wouldn't know that.
And your sister was 17 at the time, correct?
She was 17.
Counsel, when you say he was 20, we've talked about two he's in the last question.
I agree. I will go back. When I'm talking about Mike Stanley, the individual who works at Jack in the Box, correct? Who was on the couch with Alissa, was not the boyfriend, correct?
I don't know their relationship status.
John Lackman was the one that she was dating, the one we've seen the video they're fighting, correct? He is around the same age as Alissa.
Yeah, I think they were the same grade.
Mike Stanley was the older gentleman who worked at Jack in the Box, correct?
Yes.
How would you say that John treated Alissa?
From what I saw, it was normal. I don't know. I know that they got in that one fight where there was, and what's hard is because I didn't see it. But from what I saw, things seemed normal.
Okay. Do you remember telling Detective Anderson that you thought that John treated Alissa bad?
That sounds right.
He was a jerk to her.
I don't know if I use that exact word.
He would talk down to Alissa.
That's what I believed.
You told Detective Anderson that he was violent with her.
I was told that he smashed her finger in a car door. I did not witness that.
But you actually did witness, because you told Detective Anderson that you saw him violently grab her. You remember saying that?
No.
And you told Detective Anderson that she pulled away and that your boyfriend had never pulled you that way, and she was embarrassed. Do you remember saying that?
My boyfriend when I was 12?
Well, you're doing the interview in 2008, and you're referencing back to 2001 when John Lackman violently grabbed. You're describing.
Okay, now we have the answer. She made this in the interview they are referring to is 6 years later. She was then 19, 18 or 19. Now she's 33 and can't recall what she did at 18, 19. I don't think it's as much slander Alissa as it is presenting other possible suspects, either for ending or helping her disappear. Oh, this trial will get nasty.
A violent interaction between Alissa and John.
I would need my memory refreshed. I don't remember.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going up to 1.25 because I don't want to be here until 4 a.m. my time. I think they are talking enough slow that we can make that distinction.
Your Honor, it's just going to take a second to pull out my computer. Just decide to go to sleep.
He was in the car, so hopefully he will be home soon. Mo is making all her kids dinner, and the other people I have invited, the one other person I have invited, I know she had a friend over. She might show up later. I don't know. Hopefully we will be done by 3:30 a.m. so I can send you off to
What?
Valhalla Waite's birthday. I can
Okay, thank
check here when he. This will be a nasty trial. Just be prepared, boys, girls, or whatever you identify as. This can get nasty. If he is this with her, imagine when Alyssa's boyfriend is on the stand. He already have it out there that he may or may not have been violent to her. Yeah. Oh, this will be. Oh. This will be interesting. Can I?
I'm not sure this is the clip you meant to play. Oh, okay, they're just getting to it, I think.
Moving forward.
For some reason, something's not
It
going
didn't.
properly. So.
Yeah, I didn't talk about what you were talking about.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a brief recess. I'll ask you to be back in the jury room in about 5 minutes. Please remember the admonition. You can leave everything in the courtroom. Jury's now excused.
Okay, I can skip ahead a bit. To there. Now we're not as far behind again. I'm pausing way too much, but this is a commentary channel. I have to do it, or law and C word, of which I forgot to cover. Yeah, law and C word, so they don't go after me. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, there it is. Let's just see when Valhalla awaits. His birthday stream is starting.
Please be seated. We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. Mr. Jackson, you may resume your cross-examination of the witness whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Right before the break there, I had some issues with the recording. I was able to play you during the break the recording that I was asking you about. Did that help refresh your recollection?
Yes, thank you.
And that was an interview or a conversation, recorded conversation you had with Detective Anderson in January of 2009. And you told Detective Anderson that he was violent with her, correct?
I believe it was Summershoe, but yes.
Summershoe, okay. And you told him that he was violent with her.
Yes.
He would grab her violently.
Yeah, by the wrist, I believe is what I said.
And she pulled away.
Yes.
She looked embarrassed.
Yes.
You were concerned because she had bruises at some point.
Yes, you did have bruises.
And one time was on her cheek, another on her body somewhere.
I believe it was the hand incident I was referring to earlier. And then, yes, in that recording, I said that she had a bruise on her face.
And that concerned you.
Of course.
So that's a little bit different than when you told us that everything seemed fine, correct?
Yeah, I did not remember that.
Now I want to ask you another question that you were asked in the December 11th, 2008 interview. You were aware that Alissa had threatened to call CPS on your dad if he didn't allow her to do certain things, correct?
I was aware that she had threatened to call CPS, or I was told that.
You told Detective Anderson that you had overheard those things.
I'd overheard conversations, yeah.
You knew that she wanted to get tattoos?
Yeah.
Tongue piercings?
Yes.
She thought you and your dad were boring?
I believe she'd said that before, yeah.
And your dad wouldn't let her get tongue piercings or tattoos until she turned 18, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to ask you a question about a pretrial interview. Were you asked to do a pretrial interview in this case?
With the state?
With the defense. We requested to do an interview with you.
Oh, yes,
And you turned us down, correct?
correct.
Now, I have one more question. I believe you testified on direct about some jewelry that Alissa had that was your mother's,
Yes.
a set of jewelry, correct?
There were a few pieces, yeah.
Do you remember that question you were asked?
Yeah.
And you said that, I want to say that you said it was odd that she left that behind.
Yeah.
You know, because that was something from your mother, correct?
Yes.
It was odd to you. You believe she would have taken that.
Yeah.
But in 2008, you were asked by Detective Anderson about anything she might have left behind, if she had any heirlooms or anything she cherished. Do you remember Detective Anderson asking you that question?
I not remember, but if you say so, I believe so.
And you told Detective Anderson that she had a set of your mother's jewelry, but unfortunately it was stolen by your cousin David, who had come and lived with you guys. It was stolen a couple years before she left. Do you remember telling him that?
If I
Oh,
said that, then sure.
Would you like to listen to refresh your recollection?
No, I believe you.
I mean, did you say that then?
Yes.
So that's different than what you said on direct, correct? You said that these heirlooms, she left, and that was odd to you, correct? But in an interview in 2008, you told Detective Anderson that those heirlooms were stolen. Correct.
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
She didn't answer the question. She still hasn't adopted that saying. She said, if it said. So I'm asking her,
You
did she
asked
say
her.
that?
You asked her if that was yes, and she said yes.
You're admitting that you said that to Detective Anderson.
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
So are you lying now or are you lying then?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
They both can't be true, correct?
here he goes. Not sure if that is the correct approach to that witness. But that is a very specific statement she gave in 2008. The heirloom was stolen by a cousin. That is an extremely specific, and I don't buy her not remembering it 15 years later. Let's go back and hear this again. I said it 5 minutes ago, this will get nasty. The tactic of the defense is to bury every witness, especially this one.
These heirlooms, she left, and that was odd to you, correct? But in an interview in 2008, you told Detective Anderson that those heirlooms were stolen. Correct.
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
She didn't answer the question. She still hasn't adopted that saying. She said, if it said. So I'm asking her,
You
did she
asked
say
her.
that?
You asked her if that was yes, and she said yes.
You're admitting that you said that to Detective Anderson.
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
So are you lying now or are you lying then?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
They both can't be true, correct?
Objection,
What is the objection?
argumentative.
Sustained.
Where's this jewelry now? Do you have it?
I'm not sure.
Well, if it's your mother's jewelry and your sister left it behind, that would mean you have it, correct?
I'm wearing my mother's ring right now, sir.
One of them. What about the ones that were stolen by David?
I didn't see David steal anything.
Your Honor, I would like to
That's
have a
the
refresher
confusion.
recollection on this, please.
You may.
Oh, I haven't listened to any of her podcasts. But then, she started a podcast in 2019. All of a sudden, it's only 11 years after she made the statements to the police. And I saw that in the chat earlier that she has documents more or less about everything. How come this is something she doesn't remember? Oh, we are all different. I'm kind of agreeing with Tweety. I'm not sure this is the correct tactics unless he has undoubtable evidence that she knows she's lying. If he can't get that out of this, then he might have ruined it. But she mentioned the podcast. Good point, it's Mediosi. I'm not mad at his attorney. He's fighting for his client. If I'm on the jury, he's making her look bad. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is the defense tactics. And sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Ooh. And we might have an answer to why he's showing the stump and the limp. Now, if you remember this is one tactics, getting sympathy because injuries. Another tactic is to allow a female attorney sound good, ask hard. And for you who followed the Depp versus Heard trial, the way Christina, wasn't it Christina? Damn it, I forgot her name. Depp's lawyer asked Amber Heard questions. Soft voice, hard questions. Thank you so much, Brandon, for your $5 super chat. Would a Viking let her off the hook? Oh, you're so bad. No, they would have marched up to the stand, impeachment testimony tucked under the stub, and let her have it. I'm in labor law. I rarely deal with people who try to sound innocent. My dealings are often with opposing counselors and opposing employers who never want to sound weak. And it can get wild. Thank you again, Brandon. This trial will get nasty. Important context is that she believed her dad when those police interviews happened, and she was trying to get the police not to look at him. Also, very good point. Now it's up to the jury. Which of these points do they believe? Yeah. Here's the thing. She has already mentioned the trigger of this might have been her saying podcast. Maybe. I don't know. Because he was going there, but not going on that line of questioning. Then she mentioned podcast. And oh, this will be oh. Yeah, but the prosecutor at the beginning of direct. I thought that was in okay. That might show up in redirect.
Yes.
Good point. Let's go, Brandon. I like my chat. You are smart people. Yeah. Also a double-edged sword, because if they can use the podcast, so can the prosecution. And all of a sudden, other things. We don't know if opening the door towards the allegation of SA includes in opening the door, but this is interesting. This is really interesting. Let's try to jump ahead.
Rewind it, because I think it just was briefly mentioned at the beginning. Thank you.
He goes up there to show the stump.
So bad I can't make out one part is all.
A portion of that recording with Detective Anderson, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree that in that recording, he asked you specifically about any heirlooms that Alissa may have had.
Yes.
And you mentioned the set that Alissa had, correct?
Yes.
Al, for God's sake.
And that it was stolen, correct?
That was the part I couldn't make out, but that's what it seems like I was saying, yes.
Okay.
Now, that question, after listening to it, was asking about heirlooms, correct?
Yes.
At any point in that interview, did it say, I really thought it was weird she didn't take these heirlooms of my mom's. Did you ever say that to Detective Anderson?
I'm in the entire interview. I'm not sure, sir.
Did you say it in that part of the quote that I just asked you? Did you bring up at all that it was odd that she left a family heirloom behind? Because that's when he specifically asked you about the heirloom, correct?
Yeah.
And then there, that statement was not given, was it?
No, it was not.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Embroyer.
Okay. I thought there would be more, but now we are into redirect.
Or do you know any redirect?
18 minutes. So we are 20 minutes behind Sal. So yeah, you will be entering in the middle of the redirect. And now I can do this is in 1.25 again because he talks slow.
You, I think I heard you say a little earlier when Mr. Jackson was asking you questions that you had said to one of the detectives, and I don't recall whether it was Anderson or Summershoe, but that Alissa was jealous that you were left alone.
Yes.
So let's assume you said that. What did you mean by that?
Well, we were jealous of each other. She was jealous that I had no supervision. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. And I was jealous that she got to spend so much time with our father.
Now, on a number of occasions in response to his questions, you said that's what you believed. Did you mean that's what you believed at the time?
Yes.
And so, for example, I think he asked you, did you say that Alissa made poor choices? And I think you said you believed she made poor choices. What was that belief based upon?
My father's statements about how bad she was.
You said that you believed that she had behavior issues. You were under that impression. Well, what did you mean? You believed it.
That I had to reconcile these memories I have from before and now. And yeah, that's what I believed at the time, that she was out of control and wild. But as I got older and did honestly a lot worse stuff than Alissa, I realized that she was not out of control or wild.
Now, are you a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist?
No.
So are you able to diagnose mental health problems?
No.
So when you said to one of the detectives, if
Oh,
you said
I was
that
muted. Of course I was.
Alissa had been diagnosed with ADHD, you didn't mean to say you diagnosed her, correct?
Correct.
Were you ever present when any physician diagnosed her?
No.
So what made you believe that she'd been diagnosed
I'm
with
playing in
ADHD?
My father told me
1.25.
that.
But it's still faster. Let's go back to normal speed. That's rarely the case. That memory improves. If memory improves as time passes, quite often it is because
Mr. Jackson said, isn't it true that
manufactured
that camera was in the
memory.
vent for years? And I think you said, no, it wasn't in the vent for years. Was that your answer?
Yes, I believe that was
So
about it.
could it have been in the vent in that house for years, given the fact that you hadn't lived there for years?
No.
Did you say that, or in one of those interviews with detectives, either Anderson or Summershoe, you had made the statement that one of the times that your father would turn on the recorder for the surveillance cameras was when he left. Did you mean when he left the house?
Yes.
So if he wasn't there,
Yes.
he would have turned it on.
Yes.
Okay. Good point. Let's go, Brandon. Good point. Her interpretation of the situation could change, but not the memory. That's a good point. Thank you.
So do I understand you to say that your testimony is that Alissa, your father had rules for Alissa that he didn't have for you?
Correct.
What were some of the rules that he had for Alissa that he didn't have for you?
Objection outside the scope of cross. I didn't ask her about rules.
Overruled, but I'll give you recross on that if you'd like.
I'm sorry, can you state the question one more time?
Yeah, you said that, I thought you said, and maybe I'm mistaken, you said that you had more freedom than Alissa.
Yes.
So when you said more freedom,
He's
were
acting
there
as
rules that she had that you didn't have or vice versa?
Yes.
And what were some of those?
I mean, I could basically come and go as I wanted. I didn't really have to check in. I mean, I'm sure if I didn't show up at night, I would have been in trouble, but I was allowed to go and do whatever I wanted, basically.
Yeah.
I also didn't have to go to school.
There was no pending question.
Now, did either Detective Anderson or Detective Summershoe ask you to get a confession from the defendant?
No.
I think I heard you say on cross-examination that you just wanted to find answers.
Yes.
Answers to what?
To what happened to Alissa?
Had you tried to get those answers on other occasions from your father?
Yes.
And had he ever provided you any answers?
No.
You're actually correct.
The Mr. Jackson asked you, isn't it true that you told detectives, and you know, I want to make sure that we're clear on when some of these interviews occurred that you've been listening to portions of. So, for example, were you interviewed like 2008, 2009?
Yes.
The ones you've been listening to, is that when those occurred?
Yes.
So has your memory of things changed over the years?
Yeah, I think I can see things more clearly now as an adult.
He said,
Weird
he asked you, did
answer.
you tell detectives that you went to California one time, or when you went with with the defendant, your father, and I don't know if this was my word or his word, staked out Lynette's house? I wasn't clear. Do you remember sitting outside of Aunt Lynette's house?
No.
It's a long trial ahead of us. Maybe.
Well, so you're not saying it didn't happen.
Yeah, correct. It could have happened. I just don't remember.
Is that something your father told you that he did?
Objection foundation. She said she doesn't have any recollection of it, apparently.
Overruled, the witness may answer if the defendant told her that that's what he did.
He did say that part of his looking for Alissa was investigating our aunts.
Well, had you ever been with him when he was watching Alissa?
Yes.
Like where, for example?
Objection outside the scope of cross.
Overruled, but I'll give you recross on that if you'd like.
Oh, I don't like that.
Um,
Overruled, because now I'm not. Now I've seen this in the chat before about him filming her at work. None of that was in cross, and doing a recross doesn't help because can't unfork a cluster fork. Yeah. You can't shove the crap back into the horse. Once it's out, it's out. And if it was ruled before trial, don't go there. Then they have to establish that the door was open. Now, this is Arizona, and the judge has every right to do as he sees fit. I just don't like this ruling.
Overruled, but I'll give you recross on that if you'd like.
I had gone with him to watch Alissa at Jack in the Box, as well as when she stayed at our brother's apartment.
So had she stayed with, you said her brothers or your brothers, when did that happen?
That was, gosh, I'm trying to remember the timeline now. Oh, that was the year before, the summer before.
Summer of
Okay.
2000.
Didn't know
She
that.
had spent some time with some of your brothers.
Yes,
Which ones?
Mike and John.
Now, Mr. Jackson asked you, is it true that they requested to interview you before trial, correct? And I think you said they did, and you declined,
Yes, correct.
correct? Had you been advised that you had a right to decline that interview
Yes,
under law?
yes.
This is not really rehabilitating much, in my opinion.
You may.
But we don't
Can
know
I
how
see
long
that
the
before he does it?
recross. I'm speeding up again so we don't get too far behind.
That's not how the rules.
Thank you, Mads.
I would have to read it completely. I'm not sure.
Mr. Jackson, I believe, asked you, and these may not be his exact words. Is it true that it appeared when you walked into Alyssa's room that it was in proper order, nothing out of place?
Yeah, just the backpack stuff, or what I thought was the stuff from her backpack on the ground.
Did she normally keep her room clean and tidy?
Yes.
Did it appear clean and tidy to you?
Besides that one area, yes.
Now, the jewelry. Let's assume that you said in an interview that you believed that an uncle had taken some of the jewelry,
Yeah, our cousin, yeah.
or I'm sorry, cousin. I mean, is that something you saw happen?
No,
So why did you believe it?
because my father,
Objection relevance. Call for hearsay.
Can I hear the question again, counsel?
Yeah, let me rephrase it. Did you tell the detectives in an interview that you believed your cousin had taken some of that jewelry?
yes,
Why did you believe that?
because that's what I was told,
By whom?
my father.
Was there still some of that jewelry there? Let's assume some was taken.
Let's assume? What? Let's assume? I don't like this prosecutor.
Was there still jewelry left that was important to Alissa?
Yeah, I'm wearing some now.
That is basically admitting, yes, there was stuff gone. And she's wearing one ring. That, and what she claims is heirloom. We don't know. I don't like this prosecutor now. not that he's asking bad questions, but he's not asking enough of them to rehabilitate, in my opinion.
That's all the questions I have.
What?
Thank you, Mr. Imbordino. Mr. Jackson.
That's it. Nothing about the boyfriend. Nothing about the grabbing. Nothing about infidelity. Nothing. What the hell was that? I'm not. You who you in the chat? I know you're there. Who knows more about the podcasts and the evidence that is not admitted in? Do you think that was rehabilitating from the cross-examination? I don't think so, but I want to hear from people who are potential jurors. Would you think that was rehabilitating? This was weird. And now we have recross. Oh. Oh. That was bad. From that cross-examination, this rehabilitation was bad. Unless he could see the jury really disliking the lawyer. But that was not good.
And did you want recross on the rules that the defendant had for Alissa that he did not have for Sarah?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. When you're referring to these rules, back in 2001, you were 12 years old, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't do a lot, correct? Stayed home mostly.
Before Alyssa went missing, yes.
You were the sensible one back then, correct? That's what you told Detective Anderson?
Yes.
So the rules, when you're talking about the rules changing, you're saying the rules changed for you when you were 16 and 17 years old, not when you were 12. Because you didn't leave the house. That's what you told Detective Anderson, correct?
That's what I told Detective Anderson, but no, the rules were different, sir.
Okay. You said that you were a bad kid. You were doing all sorts of crazy things back then. That's what you told this jury. You did way worse things than Alissa. You told this jury that, correct?
We're talking about two separate times.
Okay. So back in 2012, you weren't doing things worse than Alissa, were you?
In 2012, I
I'm
was.
sorry, 2001, when you were 12.
Before Alyssa left, I mean, no.
No.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, we get your question. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, Mr. Jackson, did you want cross on examples of the defendant watching Alissa?
No, it's fine.
All right. Any redirect? All right, ladies and gentlemen, any members of the jury have any questions for the witness? We have a few.
Okay, we are in jury questions. Now we have to listen careful because this might give you an inkling on where they are going with this.
Counsel, please approach off the record. You'll come up the ramp behind the witness.
So what's happening now is jury questions, then judge reads them, sees are these relevant. Then he will bring them up with both parties' counselors to see what's their opinion, because they might say, yes, this is a proper question, but we want to redirect on the possible answer. Yeah, slow this down for jury questions. Good idea. Good idea. I will skip ahead until they are asked. Don't smirk, sir. Bad choice.
Ms. Turney, I've got a couple of questions from the jury. The first question is, could you describe your father? What was his job, girlfriends, other friends? Did he belong to clubs? Was he active at church?
Sure. My father did not have a job since I was 6 years old. He went on disability after that. He had maybe one or two friends I can recall our entire life. At one point, he did date Alyssa's teacher, but shortly after an incident, she was not in our lives anymore, and he never dated again to at least brought anybody around. No clubs, no church, no organizations. He was mostly just at home with me.
You described Alissa as kind, outgoing, and brave. Why did you describe your sister as brave?
She was really brave. I didn't realize how brave she was. She was brave enough to stay. Alyssa was never afraid of anything. She taught me to be brave. Like when I was afraid of stuff in my closet, she told me to open it up and scream at it so that I would scare it back. So that's why I would describe Alyssa as brave.
Okay, I agree, O-Line Red. That was not a great jury question from the defense perspective. There might be more questions, but that's not a good one.
Mr. Jackson, any follow-up questions from the defense to the jury questions?
Yes, just briefly about, you said your dad was injured on the job, or he had a job and then he got injured. Is that correct?
Yes,
And then he was collecting disability because of that injury?
yes.
You hurt his knee or something?
That's what I know now. That's not what I was told then.
Thank you.
Any follow-up questions from the state? All right, thank you, ma'am. You may return to the back of the courtroom, and the state may call its next witness.
Okay. Direct, cross, redirect, recross. Huge plus for the defense, in my opinion. The jury questions, especially about why did you describe her as brave? That was not a good question for the defense point of view. Yeah. Those questions sounded like the jury felt bad for her. Yes, Mads. And John Gary, both questions seemed pro-state. Yeah. That O-Line Red, essentially both questions combined is, why is your dad so weird? Yeah. So now we know what we don't know, but those were not good questions for the defense, in my opinion. Which means that the defense tactic might have backfired. And I said it. This could go either way. We with law training see things a bit different than potential jurors. Yeah. I like how the jury can ask questions, says John H. Yeah. Weird doesn't make you a killer. I agree, Hamplant. But for some, it might be enough for a conviction. Even when there's only witnesses who claims things. But we will go into the prosecution's next witness.
And I believe this witness has asked not to be have her face shown by the media. Is that correct? All right, so it's ordered that the media not show this witness's face. Good afternoon, ma'am. if you'll please come forward towards me, right this way. The woman that's standing to my left is going to get your name from you, and then she's going to swear you in.
Sandra Yevsacek. Sandra, Sandra. Last name is E, V as in Victor, Seichik. Sorry. I do.
And ma'am, if you could please take a walk up that ramp and then have a seat on the witness
Did I get
stand
that
here
right?
to my right.
Chat.
You'll see a little microphone there if you'll just make sure that you're speaking into that. Thank you. Mr. Bailey, you may proceed with direct examination of the witness whenever you're ready.
Hey, Judge, would you please introduce yourself to the jury, ma'am?
My name is Sandra Yevsacek,
All right, and where do you currently work?
Sprouts Farmers Market,
All right, and do you live locally?
Englandale.
And, well, do you remember a time when you worked at Jack in the Box?
Yes,
And were you a manager at that time?
I was first assistant manager.
Okay, when was that?
Now, as long as we hear her and the defendant has the right to face his accuser, so yeah, I don't mind if she doesn't want to show her face. As long as the jury can see her and the defendant can see her. Oh, Jungmin is here and excited utterance. Sorry. Yeah, I did see excited. That's Jungmin. Yeah. Oh. So this witness was a manager at the Jack in the Box where Alissa worked. Okay.
I worked for them a long time, but at that, it was like from 99 to
I'm
2003. I
speeding
believe.
up to
All right, so
1.25.
were you working with them back in 2001?
Yes,
And did you work at multiple Jack in the Boxes during your career there?
yes.
And was there one in particular that you were working in May of 2001?
Yeah, on 40th Street in Bell.
Was that in Paradise Valley?
Yes,
All right. Did you manage an employee at various times by the name of Alissa Turney?
yes,
And do you remember her?
yes.
All right. And did you?
I know I don't have to say anything, but even though we know her name, basically don't know the exact spelling. No contact, no anything. This is just yeah, you know what it means.
You do a police interview about this back in 2008,
Yes.
and did you do a defense interview as well?
I don't know if that was in 2008, but I have, yeah.
So sometimes lawyers ask terrible questions, even though we think we don't. At some point, did you do a defense interview?
Yes.
Okay. How did you know Alissa from your time at Jack in the Box?
She was one of my employees.
All right. And so were you able to observe her at work?
Yes,
And were part of your duties to manage her and monitor her work responsibilities?
yes.
How was she as an employee?
She was a great employee.
How long approximately were you there supervising Alissa?
Probably about 6 months.
All right. And do you remember what Alyssa's hours approximately were during that time?
It would
Have you been
probably
drinking
after
white
school,
wine
so
again
between 2
lately?
and 3 till probably 9 or 10 at night.
All right. And do you recall if she was under 18 at that time?
I believe so.
And were there restrictions on when individuals who were under 18 could work their
Yeah,
hours?
they couldn't work past 10.
Okay. You said she was a great employee.
She was. I've managed many teenagers, and she was one of the better ones.
Why do you say that?
You didn't have to give her a lot of direction. She, would know what to do once she learned, and she was real friendly with our customers and the other employees. And
So she
Did
could
she
easily employable.
did she create any
otherwise,
problems for you
everywhere.
or other employees while she was at work?
no,
What hours were you working during that time?
normally I work 9 p.m. till 6 a.m., but I did do some 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. shifts.
Okay.
It kind of varied.
And had a pinch hit at various times?
Yes.
All right. Did you observe any drug issues with her?
No,
And did you know if she had a boyfriend?
I honestly don't remember if she did or not.
All right. Do you remember, did you meet any of her family?
I met her father.
And how did you meet her father?
He would come up to the restaurant while she was working, and she had introduced us.
Okay. Do you recall if her father would also watch her from the parking lot?
Objection
Yeah.
meeting.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Yeah, there was times that he would be in the parking lot while she was on shift.
Okay. At some point, did Alissa not show up for a shift?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I called to see if maybe she was just running late, or, something was sick and had forgot to call in, or
Okay. And what response were you given?
that Mr. Turney had just got home and her backpack was missing, and there was a note saying she had ran away.
Okay. And do you recall if this was in May of 2001?
It sounds about the right time period. Yeah.
And based on your recollection, can you remember a date?
No, not an exact date. No.
Do you remember a possible day of the week?
Yeah.
Honestly, I
They
don't.
did try to
That's fine.
object, but
Did you know some of the other employees that Alissa worked with?
Yes.
Was one of those employees named Chris Ridenour?
Yes.
Was another employee named Mike Stanley?
Yes.
And you supervise those individuals?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you received your wages from Jack in the Box? How you were paid?
We were paid by paycheck every 2 weeks.
Okay, and what was that process? Was it by check only?
Yes. Yeah. They would come in on Fridays, but payday was actually on Saturday.
All right, and if an employee wanted money from their check, was that something that Jack in the Box would assist them with?
No.
So an employee would have to go to a bank or find some other means to get the money?
Correct.
oh, they are going into. She had to deposit it into her account, but that doesn't say she was allowed to
You said
withdraw.
that the paychecks come in on Friday?
Yes. They came in
Live.
to UPS on Fridays, and then we would distribute them on Saturdays.
Okay, so Jack in the Box received them on Fridays, these checks on Fridays.
Correct.
And then they would be distributed to employees on Saturday?
Correct.
And as part of management, did you have the ability to have their checks on that Friday?
She disappeared on Friday, which means that she could have received more money if she just waited a day. That's what they are going into.
We weren't supposed to. On occasion, the store manager would say if somebody had a situation and they needed their check to go
Yeah,
ahead and give it to
20
them,
minutes
but they
now.
weren't dated till the Saturday. So getting them cashed was, I don't know if they would be able to do that, but
Okay. And did Alissa ever come to collect another check after she missed that shift?
not that I'm aware of. No.
And I guess in that same vein, did you ever see Alissa again
No.
after she failed to show up for that shift?
No.
No additional questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Any cross-examination from the defense?
Okay, that was very short. That was just to establish she didn't pick up her Saturday paycheck. Which is weird if she is running away to not hide for a day, pick up her paycheck, go away. The defense opening statement was good. So I would believe that defense case in chief will be good, and so will the closing statement.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
Oh, new attorney.
Ma'am, as you're aware, Alissa went missing in 2001,
Yes.
and you were her supervisor at the time. We've established that.
Yes.
But the police actually never came to talk to you in 2001. Is that correct?
Correct.
The first time you remember speaking with the police was in 2008.
Correct.
7 years after Alissa had disappeared.
Correct.
So there are some things that you don't remember, and that's understandable. And during the defense interview, we had discussed possibly a letter that you may have written.
They had mentioned something about a letter that was written. Yes.
And we have a copy of that. Would it help if I gave you a copy of that to refresh your
Oh, maybe
recollection?
so. Yeah.
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Okay. Yeah, that's just it. We will probably get there. But if this was a minor's joint account with the father, she might not have been able to redraw that money. We don't know yet. It should be should be brought in as evidence at some point.
You may.
So for the record, I'm showing the witness States Exhibit 72.
I honestly don't recall.
We are 2 hours in. Can speak more clearly. Generally 2 hours is generally 2 hours in is when YouTube stops looking at this. Let's continue. No, that is a Norwegian fire-farting dragon. Look again.
I was just showing it to you. I showed it to her. I'm asking to it, yeah. So, ma'am, I just showed you a letter, and you had indicated that you had no independent recollection of it.
Right, I honestly don't.
Does it look like your handwriting?
It does look like my handwriting,
Okay.
yes.
So, ma'am, I mean, is it fair to say that if it's your handwriting, you
How can people don't remember a letter they wrote down 15 years ago in this kind of circumstances? I don't get it.
probably wrote it?
More than likely, yes.
I mean, your name is on the page of it, right?
Right.
And then on the back, it says that it's for Alyssa's dad. The letter. Did you remember seeing that on the back?
Oh, I didn't, but yeah.
Would you like to see it again?
No, that's fine.
And in this writing, there's a description of a male with blonde hair,
Is that a yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
5'10",
Yes,
both arms completely tattooed,
yes,
large holes in ears.
yes,
Now, when you worked at the Jack in the Box, there were a lot of customers who came in.
yes.
You don't remember all of them,
No,
but at the time, you remembered this customer.
apparently I did, yes.
And you gave this description to Mike Turney,
Okay.
Alyssa's father.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
There must have been a reason that you gave him this description.
Yeah, I mean, there must have been, I just don't recall.
Possibly a connection to Alissa.
Possibly, yeah.
And you don't have an independent memory of this note now,
I do not, honestly.
which makes sense. This is over 20 years later,
Correct.
right? And you didn't have a memory of it during the police interview in 2008.
Okay.
No, I did not.
But the first time you spoke with the police was 7.5 years after Alyssa's disappearance.
Correct,
And you only knew Alyssa for 6 months,
correct,
only in a work capacity.
correct.
You weren't particularly close to her.
No,
So it's understandable that you might not remember 10, 20 years later.
correct.
Ma'am, I want to turn now to what you do remember about
Okay.
Alissa. Okay. You testified that Alissa worked part-time,
Correct,
still in high school.
correct,
She worked at Jack in the Box for about 6 months.
correct, yes,
She worked the second shift starting in the afternoon,
correct.
and you worked the night shift.
Most of the time, yes.
Because of the laws and because of her age, she usually didn't get off work later than 9 or 10 p.m.
That's correct,
But she would work the afternoon to evening shift.
correct.
So sometimes she would get out when it was dark outside.
Absolutely.
And you had testified on direct that you had witnessed Mike, Alyssa's dad, in the parking lot.
Correct,
Is it possible that he was in the parking lot to pick her up?
correct, if it's possible.
Now, Alissa was much younger than you.
Yes,
So you had mentioned that your conversations were a little bit more surface level,
correct.
and you didn't really remember much about what you had talked about with Alissa.
No, not too much, normal. I was the mother of 4 teenagers at the time, so it was teenager
Right.
stuff.
Right, right. But you do remember her mentioning California.
Yes, she had mentioned California.
She was saving her money.
Yes.
So just a few more questions. You've met Mike, Mr. Turney.
I have.
He would come into the restaurant sometimes when Alissa was working.
Absolutely.
You told the police that he would come in and talk to us all the time.
Yes.
And you're referring to us as other employees.
Yes.
He would order something to drink.
Yes.
And there's also other people who would occasionally stop in to see Alissa.
Oh, I'm sure there was. Yeah.
Well, you'd mentioned it to the police that there
Yeah.
was.
You know, I heard some of her friends from school because her school was just,
Yeah.
you know, right there, and they would stop by.
And you had mentioned to the police that there was a guy who would occasionally stop by the restaurant to see Alissa.
Probably did, you know. I'm trying to
And
remember.
it's okay. I know it's been a long time. So if you don't have a memory of that now, that's okay. But if that's something you told the police.
Yeah, I'm sure there was, you know, she had male and female friends that would come by and, you know, see her. And I'm sure there was some that were regular that, you know, I'd seen more than once.
Sure. I'm referring to somebody in the interview that you said that there was a guy who would come in to the restaurant and that guy stood out to you.
I can't place him offhand, but you know, that's very possible. Yes.
How don't people remember this?
Now, after Alissa went missing, Mike stopped by the Jack in the Box
Maybe that's why she
Yes.
still works
about a
at
day or
Jack in the
two
Box.
later.
More, yeah, probably a day or two. Yeah.
Mike was looking for information about Alissa,
Yes.
and no one had any information about where she had gone.
No.
And he actually came in several times after that.
Yes.
No, she didn't have a vehicle. She didn't have a driver's license, but her sister testified that she had driven the dad's car.
Looking for her.
Yes.
So she knew how to drive.
So in those first few weeks, you heard from Mike,
Yes.
but you didn't hear from the police.
No.
And ma'am, you testified on direct about a man named Mike Stanley.
Yes.
Are you, and he was the one of the other shift managers, right?
Correct.
Okay. And he works the
Apparently-
night shift?
Yes.
So he had to be over 18?
Yes.
Time. Are
I
you
believe so.
okay? Are you aware of how old he was?
I'm not offhand. No, probably. Like if he was working at nights, he was over 18, but
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right. All right, just a moment, Your Honor.
Yeah, I agree. Just that if you're giving a police statement, even if it's 7.5 years later, at least that should be in your memory.
Ma'am, and I know this was a long time ago, but do you remember any conversations or any issues that came up between Alissa and Mike Stanley?
No, I'm not aware of any. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hicks. Mr. Bailey, any redirect?
Thank you, Judge. Do you remember anyone concerning coming that you when you were managing Alissa? Anyone concerning?
Wait. I'm just checking here. Okay, yeah, he did
That came to visit Alissa?
No.
And if there was a customer that was concerned to you about their treatment or what they're doing with an employee, is that something that you would have reported?
apparently it's the
absolutely.
podcast, but if it's not in evidence, I can't count that into my analysis. So far, everything in this trial
Judge, that's all the
is
questions. I'll ask.
Sarah's.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Word.
Ladies and gentlemen, any
It
members of the
is,
jury have any questions for this witness?
I have
It
a
appears
hard
that there are
time
none. May the witness
seeing
be
that
excused.
going
Any objection?
anywhere near.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused. Ladies and gentlemen, this is probably a good time for our afternoon break. It's
Hey.
3:15 now. I'll ask you to be back in the jury room at 3:25. That's 10 minutes from now. You can leave everything in the courtroom if you'd like. Please remember the admonition. The jury is now.
Okay, we go up until we are just 6 minutes behind.
We're back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. The state may call its next witness.
Okay, again, tomorrow I will do the morning session because this is way too late and I have work in a few hours. But I will do, because I promised I would do the entire day today. tomorrow I will do the morning session. That way we can start, stop, and stuff like that. The afternoon session will begin the day after. We will do that. We will play it a little bit faster. We can go through the breaks and everything, and then we will catch up with the court's morning session. You who are regular at Jeff's stream know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, because I can't go on until 2 a.m. every night. That would probably kill me. Just so you know. Let's go on.
Ma'am, if you'll please come forward and give the clerk your name and she'll swear you in.
Let's go down so we can hear.
Swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
And then, ma'am, if you could just take a walk up that ramp there and then have a seat on the witness stand here to my right.
Let's see how.
And you'll see that little black microphone there. If you can just make sure you're speaking into that. Thank you. Mr. Bailey, whenever you're ready, you may proceed with your direct examination of the witness.
Thank you, Judge. Charity, can you please introduce yourself to the jury? And I forgot to note that you have a name change. So if you could provide your name back in 2001 and then now as well.
Okay, so I'm Charity Robinson when I knew Alissa, and Charity Bren this day. And I was friends with Alissa.
Okay. What do you do right now for work?
I'm an office manager.
And do you live locally?
I live in Surprise.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
Mostly in Arizona. I was born in Utah, but I've lived the majority of my life here in Arizona.
All right. So did you live back in Arizona back in 2001?
I did.
And did you live in
That would
Arizona?
eat the entirety
At
of
what
me.
point did you move from Utah to Arizona?
At the age of about 2 years old.
Right. Did you do a police interview in 2008?
I did.
Okay. And do you remember talking about how you knew Alissa?
I do.
How'd you meet Alissa?
Through a mutual friend that attended the same school as us.
I can play
Okay.
this in
And
1.25.
approximately what age were you when that happened?
I'm a little bit hairy on that because I want to say that it was at least for my sophomore and junior year, but it may have only been just before my junior year and then through.
Gigi makes a good point. Chat, I need a few hours of sleep. We will continue right here. Tomorrow because we know that the court will not start until 10:30 Arizona time. That is 8:30 my time. So we will come back tomorrow at 7 my time, which will be 1 p.m. Eastern time or noon Central time. Yeah, and I see lots of people in the chat are tired. Now, I will redirect you to Valhalla Awaits birthday stream. That doesn't start until, oh, that's 3 hours away. I can't subject you to that. Let's see here. What else is going on? Ronkel of the Bailey. No, that's 2:30 a.m. That's almost as bad. No, it will be so you can say happy birthday to Valhalla in his chat and then go to bed or wait for him to start. So, well, yeah, I need a few hours of sleep. Yeah, I know Aussie. Aussie just woke up because Aussie Excited Utterance is from Australia, the place that doesn't exist. and he just woke up because he's weird. It's a weird place. And yeah, we will pick up tomorrow at 7 p.m. my time, 1 p.m. Eastern US time, noon US Central time. And thank you all for showing up. Like, subscribe on the way out. Poor Sal, he is in court and wondering what the fuck happened. I will tweet him so he knows. Then he can come on tomorrow before he goes to court and tell us what his experiences were. Okay. Let's play an outro, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.